Welcome to The Secret Witch Show, the podcast providing a safe and alchemical altar space of conversations which help powerful women escape a half-hearted, spiritless society and rediscover the freedom of living a wildly magical life. Every other week, we explore how to cast aside the wounds of shame, guilt, and fear connected with fully being yourself, so you can grant yourself permission to stop hiding, ground soulfully back into your body, illuminate your whole soul desires, tend your soul, rediscover and reclaim your powerful gifts, express your magic, and manifest your wildest alchemy. There's no better place to become who your heart longs to be. This is where we will guide you into liberation. I'm your host, Nicole Barton, and I'm so excited to dive in. Welcome, beauties. Oh, wow. Does it feel so nourishing to have slowed the pace of the show down whilst I work on some big projects in the background behind the scenes? And at the same time as saying that, I also miss popping up here to monologue on The Witch. So I'm excited to be back for a solo episode. As in my kind of like slowing down, I've been embodying the lover witch, soaking in the sunshine here in the UK, which is rare, embodying my wild witch out in nature. And I'm really feeling both wild and feral, and soft and passionate all at once, which is divine and the full expression of the witch. And I've been called to express more again on social media, all about the things secret witch to wild witch journey, because I got real clarity in this kind of ease and slowing down that the wild witch is who the secret witch is here to embody. And by the wild witch, I really mean the parts of us that are fully willing to own our power, magic, and truth. So I would love for you to follow me if you feel called on social, where you can hear me share more about that, more of my voice. So here are the ways that you can connect with me. You can connect through Facebook if you look for Nicole Amanda Barton. We also have a Facebook group, which is the Secret Witch Sisterhood. There are a few different Secret Witch groups and pages, which is a bit cheeky when I own the trademark. So do be sure to find the right one. Then we've got Instagram, which is at I am Nicole Barton, and TikTok, which I think is at archetypal apothecary. Find me in all those places. Also, if you love this show, I would love it if you would write a review for it and rate it. It means so much to us smaller producers when people leave comments. Like, I'm just a wild witch here, loving to receive comments about how you feel as a listener. So if you feel inclined, please do. Thank you so much. Let's dive into the show, though. So on the Secret Witch Show today, I am speaking to one of my own core medicine topics, reclaiming our voice as a wild woman and sharing our stories as healer witches. Drawing on over a decade of writing, speaking, and being seen across media, podcasts, and live event spaces, I bring a deeply personal and lived perspective to what it truly means to express our truth in the world. So this isn't just about storytelling, it's about the initiation of visibility, the courage to be seen in our vulnerability, and the alchemy of turning our wounds into medicine. In this episode, I explore what it really takes to reclaim our voice and truth. I share my own journey from silence and fear to visibility and authentic expression, and open a deeper conversation around the witch wound, the costs of being seen, and the identity shifts that come with stepping into our power. I explore how our stories are archetypal remedies for others, and how when we heal and integrate our wounds, our story becomes medicine, not just for ourselves, but for others, even if that is just our immediate local community, family, friends, village. This is a raw initiatory exploration of visibility, truth, and feminine power, and what it truly means to be seen, even exploring the fantasy of being seen by others and how the real gold is truly seeing ourselves. Let's dive in. Welcome, Secret Witches. We have a juicy topic today. How to reclaim your voice and share your story as medicine and be truly seen. There's quite a lot. And like so crucial to the secret witch who maybe does kind of not know her power, magic, and wild capacity to be who she is. So, yeah, I feel like this is such a good topic. And actually, it's quite synchronistic how it's turned out because I had a soul sister who was meant to be speaking to this topic today, and it got unavoidably cancelled. And as I was sitting there, I suddenly realized like, this is actually one of my own medicine topics. Like, it's so funny how we can forget that we're qualified, in inverted commas, to speak on things, embodied to speak on things. It's almost like my own story is hiding behind me asking someone else to speak to the topic. And of course, that is very meta for this episode. It's like I'm living the exact wounding of like hiding my voice and not sharing my story as medicine. So I sensed that I was actually always meant to speak to this myself. And it makes sense. I was thinking about this because I often don't share very widely, but I've used my voice, I've shared my story. And actually, when I total up, like my story, my voice has been seen by millions of people. And that's actually not an exaggeration. That's actual data. Like I've added that up because I've been a writer for over a decade. And now I'm a speaker, obviously, through the podcast. I share my voice on social media. And there's lots of different ways that I show up and be visible and be seen. And don't put me on a pedestal in that, because like that's still edgy in many ways to me. But I have been a writer for over a decade. So maybe even 15 years or more. And so I've written for a variety of media, from spiritual magazines like Kindred Spirit magazine, to Soul and Spirit magazine, to Witches magazine, to Yoga magazine, to blogs like major blogs like Tiny Buddha, McGill Media, many, many others. And even like to more mainstream publications. So not just the spiritual world, but places like Best Magazine I was seen in recently, and Metro, and also appearing using my voice on like mainstream radio. So things like Badass Women's Hour on Talk Radio, and obviously recording my own Top 10% Secret Witch Show podcast. I've also led events at festivals like Rest Fest, and in top London yoga studios like Fire and Alchemy. So leading in-person face-to-face events. And the totality of visibility is in the millions between all of those places. And that's partly also why I help other witches who are on that secret witch to wild witch journey with sharing their own voices, reclaiming their voices from the conditioning, which I'm going to dive into, and becoming even more visible, both with just sharing their voice with their local communities, their family, their friends, because that is even edgy for the secret witch, or becoming visible in the media, in press, on social, because I have journeyed that. I'm going to speak in a bit more to that because it's relevant to this topic. But what I'm trying to say is not like, oh, look at me, like I've shared in all these places. Like the reason why I'm sharing that is because I know well the fear, the doubt, the shame, the guilt, the terror that comes up for women who are magical and who were born here to be powerful, to be wild, to share their voice, and even just to be themselves. Like I know the fear in that as a woman in the world, just as a woman, like not even a healer witch, but also as a healer witch. Just being a woman here who wants to share her voice and be heard. Like there is so much fear. So this is not just for women who identify as like, I'm a healer witch, I'm going to be a healer witch. But for many of the women who listen in, which is many of our listeners who are not even here to be healers for others, but just simply here to reclaim their own voice and their own wild witch and their own true authentic expression. Because that is also just as terrifying. Like to be truly seen as our authentic selves is one of the most vulnerable things that we can do. And it's the very core of why the secret witch stays hiding. And to be clear, like I still feel this in my own version of this edge. Like I'm feeling called. I was speaking recently to a soul sister because I'm feeling called at some point to lead retreats. And I was chatting to someone about this, saying just the other day, about that being an edge for me. Like there's an edge in being truly seen in my power, leading, moving my body, embodying the archetypes in person, face to face with my own power, being fully expressed, fully witnessed by a group in person. Because I'm used to that online. Like that's not an edge for me anymore. But it's like, what's the next edge? And there's always a deeper spiral that we go with this. So whether you're here listening because you want to just simply be seen for who you are, you just want to reclaim your voice, and share your voice with your nearest and dearest, more from your power, magic, and wildness, or whether you're here as a healer witch who wants to know how to share your story with the world, with the media, to live your soul medicine, to share your gift. This episode is for you, because the secret witch struggles with those things. And as I kind of contemplated that this morning, I was contemplating my own relationship with voice and visibility before the work with the witch. And I thought back to, this is something I've been writing about recently, how when I was a child, I was actually labeled mute by a psychiatrist. Like that was an actual label given to me by the medical system. And of course, like me being me and my worldview that's kind of been like, okay, no, like I am me, you don't get to label me. Like obviously this wound has been, and I always say our gifts are found in our wounds, like this wound of me being completely mute, like literally not speaking, which I think is a lot to do with being a witch and the wounds of the witch, which we'll come to. And transmuting that to become a speaker, to become somebody who, I don't know, presents on stage. That's something I didn't mention that I do. Like I've presented at exhibitions around aromatherapy, like led workshops. And like I remember that moment actually. And that moment of like transmutation of this wound of like being completely mute, completely terrified to talk, into being able to express myself through a variety of media, through on social, through my events, through my, being on stage, literally, and being fully seen. And it's easy to think when we see someone showing up in their truth, in their wild, in their power, in their magic, that that's just something that comes naturally. Like I think a lot of people assume that I just naturally have always been able to do this. And it's very far from the reality I had of my childhood, where I literally didn't speak to anyone. I was bullied. I didn't have any friends. Like I was the kid in the playground who preferred to be on her own because I quite literally did not want to speak. I couldn't use my voice. It was just like my throat chakra was just kind of tight. And I also remember even like early on in my witchy journey, like going to do a yin yoga training. I think it was yin yoga. Yeah, it was yin yoga in Bali, and experiencing that same like I'd go to speak and it's like it just won't come out, like my voice, and I'd sit there and I'd panic and I'd be like, oh my God, what am I going to say when it gets, because we're in this sharing circle, like what am I going to say? What am I going to say when it comes to me? Like I don't know how am I going to say? Like I literally, my voice won't come out. As you can see now, I don't have that problem. I'm just like on one, like, let's talk about this. Because that's me, like that's me being in the full expression. But back then, like it was so far removed from my vision that I would ever be able to hold space in a podcast, hold space in events, like be seen. And there was one time actually, I remember I had this insight. It was actually at the end of the yin yoga training where I had actually done the, there was like a teacher training piece and we had to teach a class, and this was to 40 people. Now you imagine the beginning of that month-long journey, I was like, I can't even speak in circle. To the end, I'm there like walking around the room, sharing my voice, like teaching, reading this beautiful poem. And I remember I did it. And at the end, like the whole group rushed over to me to give me like this big hug and was like, oh, Nicole, this is your gift. And it was only then that I realized I've just spent my life not talking. Like, how could anybody see me? And so I think probably that was the moment where I began to see, wow, like I've not been seen, which I've craved. Like I've craved being seen my whole life, but I've not been seen because I just didn't speak. And I think that was the moment I realized I was being called to be more visible. I got goosebumps as I think about that. Actually, yeah, like it was just such a moment of like, oh, I could have just spoken because that's what I did. I just spoke. I spoke. I taught, and then when people felt that, saw that, they rushed into me and they were like, "I see you. This like you are a gift." And I was like, "Holy shit!" Like I could have just been doing this the whole time. like um, and that's when I started to share my voice more because I remember like shaking visibly before that moment, like as I was just about to go in and teach, and I was jumping up and down and like really using all the skills that I'd just been taught in this yoga training, like to try and like lean into that edge. And it was a huge edge. It was probably like more of a 10 out of 10 edge. I often say to the secret witches, make it like a 7 out of 10. Like our body and our system wants to feel like it's an okay edge to move into. Like that moment wasn't. That was like a 10 out of 10 edge to teach that class. But it was the moment where I realized like, this is your work, Nicole. Like, this is what you're here for. You're here to be seen. You're here to help others who want to be seen, who haven't been able to speak. The secret witches, which I didn't realize at the time, but that became clear. And in that moment, like my body was tense. My throat was like, it was like I was spitting up rocks. Like my chest was tight. It was like I couldn't breathe. I was hot, like red cheeks, like really, really challenging to speak. So like when we begin to start to be called to sharing more of our truth and just even like sharing who we are, even if that's just with family and friends, like we can feel this physically in our sensations. It will feel uncomfortable. And often it's that noticing that becomes the call. And I say this is one of the ways that the secret witch calls to us. And it's through sharing that kind of journey from mute secret witch to liberated wild witch, sharing her voice, showing up in the world, sharing her medicine, that has become like somewhat of like, it was my own personal heroine's journey. I don't know if you've read the book, The Heroine's Journey by Maureen Murdoch, but essentially the feminine needs to come face to face with her wounds, her demons, in order to transmute them. And that's very much what the witch invites us into. So if you're sitting here listening and you're like, I don't feel like I have a voice, like I don't know how to share my story as medicine, like this is the initiation that the witch calls us to. And what's interesting about that is that I often used to share writing, and in particular, that was like an entry point that felt okay, that felt accessible. But what I noticed about that as I was reflecting on this before I started recording was at the time when I started writing, because I always remember this distinction of being like, well, I'm a writer, and I was doing the Bali training, the yin training after being a writer. So I was already sharing my voice. But I was like, what's the difference here? And I realized that what was going on was that at the time when I was writing, I was sharing about something that was very universal. It was like spiritual wisdom. That wasn't about me. It wasn't about my opinion. You know, I wasn't speaking my truth. And honestly, like that was easy in many ways. I was showing up, sharing. I mean, it was not easy. It was not like fully easy. It was still edgy to show up on camera. I remember being criticized as I was going through my divorce for showing up online and speaking some spiritual stuff. And my ex-husband was like, "You're so weird. Like, you're so weird." And I was like, oh, I could feel that. And it stopped me, it shut me down for a while. But it was easier than sharing my radical worldview, my own authentic truth, my own like witch's point of view, my own uniqueness, my own gifts, my own, point of view, worldview, which is what I also help women to access. And again, because it was very much like that was part of what the witch initiated me into, was seeing my gifts. And I think when we're not specifically sharing the truth of who we are, and sometimes we don't know the truth of who we are yet, but like that's almost easier to show up and use our voice in some ways as well. So it's also part of the witch's initiation, is learning to touch the truth of who we are within ourselves, learning for ourselves what that even is. Because often we've spent so long in conditioning, shutting down our magic, shutting down our spirituality, shutting down all of the things that the witch represents, and being like, no, can't speak that out because I'm a lunatic. Like, they're going to be judged as a lunatic. People think I'm weird. Like, it's when we start to peel back those layers and decondition the witch and the witch wound, which I'm going to speak to in a moment, where we start to really touch the truth of our souls. It's like we don't really truly know our souls yet. And sometimes sharing before that is easy. It's when we touch the truth of like, oh, this is who I am. Like, this is my soul. That's the part that becomes vulnerable and edgy to share. So it's almost like when we start to really truly see ourselves, that's the point where it becomes edgy to share our voice, to share our stories, medicine, and allow ourselves, that true part of ourselves, to be seen, that wild part of ourselves to be seen. And I often speak to this because this is so tied up into the secret witch. We often speak, or I often speak about what I call the witch wound, which is essentially the fear of being seen, judged, cast out, persecuted, burned at the stake for being who we are. And this is something that I think really impacts our capacity to know who we are, even often, but also to express who we are. And this often is the wound that is showing up when women are trying to reclaim their voice, are trying to share their story with the world as a healer. And we're really scared of being seen as different, as too much, as too weird, as lunatics, as like just the odd one. This is something that I journey deeply with, because that was always me and still is. Like, I'm still journeying that, because our wounds are our wounds for our lifetime. Like, they just spiral deeper and deeper, and we expand more and more. Like, it's not just like, oh, we're just going to keep spiraling into this wound. Like, we're also going to, the deeper we can go with the wound, the more we're going to be able to expand, the more we're going to be able to be seen, the more we're going to be able to share our medicine with the world, and our voice. And so I talk about the witch wound, though, because essentially it makes sense. Our bodies like restrict, and they're like, no, don't speak, don't speak, don't speak, don't use your voice, don't be seen. Like, when we shake, like, I remember sharing my story with a journalist for Best Magazine. And I was trembling as I was sharing, and I was like, why? Like, I literally speak on the podcast all the time about being a witch, but it's like, now I'm talking to a human in the mundane world. That's terrifying. Like, this is the new edge. And I was like, oh, of course, because it's the witch wound. It's the witch wound. And the witch wound lives in our bodies. Now, this has been almost like proven by epigenetics, that the things that have impacted our ancestors and ancestresses, as I call them, like back in history, down the line, down our ancestral lineage, when they have lived through something major, like the burning times, where women were burned for speaking their truth, where women were burned for their magic, their power, their wildness, where they were killed. Oof, I can feel that in my heart. When that has happened to our ancestresses, epigenetics says that this impacts our DNA, their DNA. And as things impact our DNA, our DNA is changed, like that's then passed down the lineage. So our bodies and our DNA literally holds that memory. Our cells hold the memory of the burning times. And so even if we have never had any wounding in our personal lives around sharing our voice, being seen, that will still be felt. Like that's like an ancestral trauma that we can still feel. And this is what shows up when we try to share our truth, especially when we're going against the grain. And when we are here to share our story, which of course is medicine. And I'm going to speak a little bit more to that as well. But we are afraid of being burnt at the stake, being killed, being chased out the village, being isolated, rejected, judged. This is what we're scared of. And that is the wound that will stop us from sharing our voice, from sharing our story as medicine. And so visibility, being seen, reclaiming our voice, sharing our story as medicine, like it's an initiation. It asks of us to be prepared for old parts of ourselves to die, the parts that are scared, the parts that feel the fear of rejection. And it's not just about showing up and being like, okay, I'm just going to do this. Like there's a whole body of like work to do around visibility, around being seen in our power, around being seen in our magic, around being seen in our wildness. There's like a whole portal of transformation to be able to open, soften, like be seen. And like there's a process with that. That isn't just a simple quick fix thing. Like we're not just gonna, we might just jump up on the stage and liberate it. That might be very edgy. But the invitation is to go into that for sustained transformation and healing, is to allow the witch to gently, gently, softly, softly take us into the edge, the 7 out of 10 edge of allowing ourselves to begin to be seen for who we really are. And our work is to see all the ways where we're not allowing that, where our inner little girl or secret witch, as we call her, like is resisting that, and meet her and be like, do you know what? It makes sense. Like, I love you. I see you. It makes sense you fear that. And as we do that and we accept ourselves and we love that part of ourselves that feels scared, more and more we are able to be seen. Because of course there are costs to being seen, like costs both like in reality and costs that we imagine. Like there is a very real truth to the fact that sometimes I have spoken my truth and somebody's not been able to meet that. Like I have spoken my truth multiple times and not been seen. And we have to be willing, because it's initiation, like to meet whatever comes with that. Like there are costs sometimes to allowing ourselves to be seen, but there are also costs to not being seen. There are costs to not stopping hiding, because if we continue to just hide and be the secret witch and not reclaim our voice and not share our story, we're going to be stuck in this place of not being able to be ourselves, not being able to make an impact to those around us, whether that's as a healer or just like our friends and family. And so the invitation from the witch is to kind of weigh up those costs and benefits of both options, and to really choose into that journey, because this is the place when so many women kind of stop at the edge. They're like, oh yeah, cool. This is cool. This makes sense. Like I can logically, like I can understand that. And what the witch invites us into and asks of us is to be willing to pay the price of being fully seen, being ourselves, for the benefits of being ourselves. And often we kind of get to the point of just stepping over that threshold and we stop, because it takes courage. Like there is an identity death that is required for us to reclaim our voice and share our story as medicine. Like sharing our story means we outgrow who we were when we were hiding. We expand beyond that. Like we stop being small and we allow ourselves to take up space. We allow ourselves to be powerful. The power, magic, and truth that we already are, that's been conditioned and held like as not true. And so, yeah, we have to be willing to truly become the woman that we were born here to be. And we have to be willing to meet the young parts of ourselves that fear, like reclaiming our voice and being seen, and allow those parts to feel like safe. And our old identity of the woman, of the mute child, or the one who can't speak, the one who can't use her voice, is going to fall away. And so there's kind of kinky benefits to not choosing that. Like, most women say they want to be seen, but like me, they're just like, oh, nobody hears me, and they're not speaking. Like, just like I said, like I did. I said, oh, I just haven't spoken, because there's almost like I want to say like an addiction to hiding. I don't mean that in a way like we're choosing that consciously, like we're unconsciously choosing to pay the price of not being seen. AKA, like, we lose our souls because it's easier to stay hidden. And it feels safer, even when it's costing us in all the ways. Like, we don't feel passion, we don't feel aliveness, we don't feel like we're being true to who we are. We're not reclaiming our power, we're not reclaiming our magic, we're not being the wild us, the authentic us. And that costs us and begins to show up in our bodies in ways that we often don't even relate to, like burnout, fatigue, womb symptoms, all sorts of ways, swollen breasts. There's all sorts of ways that our bodies kind of are trying to communicate to us, like, you're not being who you are. And we don't often, like, this is my radical worldview, like we don't often see that as like an indicator that we're not being and expressing our true selves. We see it as like, oh, this is inconvenient. Why am I always tired? Like, why do I keep having like painful periods? Like, we get frustrated with these symptoms, and really they're just trying to communicate. Like, there's some place you're hiding. There's some place where there's a disconnect. And so this work of like reclaiming our voice and sharing our story, and this is really tied into my worldview, because I believe that true health comes from being our fully expressed selves. Said differently, I believe suppression causes illness. And so reclaiming our voice and sharing our story as medicine, being our gifts, like expressing who we are, even if that's just to friends and family, being honestly ourselves, like, that is the medicine. And as I say that, like, there's a really important point to speak to as well, in that I see that our stories, for those who are here to share their stories and to be healers, and even those who are here to be medicine for their close communities, like for their families. Even if you've got a daughter or a son and you learn how to show up in your authenticity and model that to them, like, that's also you being medicine. So when I speak to being medicine, I'm not just meaning medicine as a healer, like, I'm meaning medicine for your local community, for your village. But I see that our stories are not just things that have happened to us, they are the medicine we carry. So when we actually heal and alchemize our wounds, our story becomes something that as we speak it out, as we model it, as we embody it, like, that serves others. Almost like, again, like we're working with, journeying with different remedies, different remedy aspects of ourselves, different parts of ourselves that we heal. And as we do, we're embodying that remedy for others as well. So I often speak about in my work about how people are remedies. And what I mean by that is our stories are part of how that medicine is shared. So our stories become what activate others. Like, me sharing this story is probably activating for parts of you that have stayed hidden. Like, you're seeing the medicine in what I'm sharing. Maybe you're resonating. That's how medicine works, through resonance. It's like, oh, there's some kind of spark of resonance, and that's saying, oh, hello, there's something here for me to look at. And in that way, some people's stories won't necessarily resonate with you, whereas others will land deeply. And as we are witches expressing our story, there will come times where, again, those costs of like not being met by some people, maybe our story wasn't resonating with that person anymore. Like, as we become more authentic, as we become more ourselves, people fall away because that they don't need the remedy that we're actually here to serve in friendship terms. Sometimes that can happen in friendships and relationships. But what it does mean is, as we show up and share the authentic truth of who we are, we share our stories, we share our medicine, like, it means that those who do have a resonance with our stories, who do have a resonance with our remedy, like, they will be attracted, magnetized into like our authentic expression. So even if we're just feeling isolated and like we haven't got a village, like the more we're in this work able to show up and speak our truth, the more that we will magnetize that village. And yet this isn't kind of a widely mainstream view. So there's a lot of deconditioning around this. But as we alchemize our wounds, as we learn how to express our true selves, our story becomes medicine. It also becomes like magnetic. And so people are remedies. And the way that we can like attract the people that we want in our lives and that are medicine for us as well is through storytelling, is through sharing our voice. And if you're a healer, that's especially important because so often we think, oh, we're just going to share our tools like Reiki or reflexology or aromatherapy or, women's circles or whatever it is that's the tool that we're here to share in the world, which we do also have. Like, that's also important to know. But like the most important thing is about serving our particular medicine. And that is found in our story, in our wounds. So being able to reclaim our voice, being able to share our story is so vital if you are here to be a healer. Now, the other thing that I wanted to speak to briefly is that sometimes, and I've been here too, is women will feel as a particularly this is about healer witches, is that we have been taught, this isn't necessarily, this is more about other people teaching in this industry, is I see a lot of people performing. I wrote a post about this recently, actually, because I was like, enough, we're wild. I don't want to perform the feminine anymore. Like, this is about us speaking our truth. And there's a real distinction because I think so much of the self-help world has been performative, has been like, there's no other word for it. Like saying what sells, saying what is marketing based. And I think what I'm inviting in raising that is to see that there's almost like a contortion. Particularly like sometimes they'll be like, oh, come here and be the wild rebel, kind of vibe going on, which is still performance. Innocently done. Like there's no shaming of that because it's just, there's not been a discovery of being true. But it's almost done in order to be more palatable. Like that kind of, anyone who's performing is performing because of the witch wound. Like we're performing in order to stay loved. And I see this, I feel this myself, like the temptation to perform, the temptation to be like, okay, I need to market this way or whatever it is, like it pulls you. And the invitation of the witch is to really feel into what is actually true for ourselves. And the way we do that is through the body, through feeling into, and this is oversimplified, like there's so much work to this, but it's like we need to really allow ourselves to come home to our bodies. I think that's probably all I'm going to say on that because I could go off for hours on that in and of itself. But the point is, the witch invites us to be in the body, to allow ourselves to tend our nervous systems, which is so vital because we have so much fear around being seen. Like visibility feels uncomfortable, it feels unsafe. And so our work is to build capacity to hold being seen. And that's very much been the work that I've been in for like 6 years, at least minimum. And yeah, to be able to be vulnerable enough, to be able to be able to open, soften, allow ourselves to be truly seen, to share our story in a way that is honest rather than performative. And I say, as I say that as well, what comes to me is that so often there's a debate about like what to share as well. And I know I've seen somebody say before, I can't remember who it was now, but somebody was talking about how women or anyone who's a healer will show up and sometimes be extra vulnerable, like to the point of like crying, tears, and there's a distinction. When I say we share like the gifts are found in the wound, often it can be misinterpreted of like, okay, I'm going to share like my process. And it's an interesting one because there's like a line between sharing, and I know Tad Hargrave, who's on the show, who's been one of my mentors, and he's amazing. He did an episode where we probably talked about this. I can't remember now, but essentially, what he talks about is that there's a difference between sharing direct from the wound or from the healed scar. And so when I'm talking about our stories being a remedy, being medicine for others, particularly, I also want to make the distinction that I'm not talking necessarily about sharing the wound live from in processing. So there's also a moment of like learning as well. This is more of a practitioner skill, but like knowing how something is ready to be shared, which is already alchemized, versus sharing something that is still ongoing and processing. So I just wanted to share that because I know that's also a topic that comes up for women who are like, how do I share my story as medicine? It's like when we're ready to share the story is when we have processed some of it as like and alchemized, as I say, alchemized the wound into gold. And by that, just to caveat as well, because this is so nuanced, I don't mean we have to wait until we're fully healed also, because that also often is something that's misinterpreted by secret witches. They're like, okay, I need to heal my wounds first. But then it's like, well, okay, I'm not healed yet, so I can't share. And it's like, it's really nuanced because there's always going to be somebody who is further behind in the journey than us. And I don't mean that in that it's a linear journey and there's a right or wrong way and that somebody knows more than the other. But there's somebody who can learn from our experience. So we don't have to fully heal. We don't have to be like, okay, I'm perfect now, because it's also not a thing. Like we're always going to be journeying with our wounds. Our wounds are our wounds for life. And so I also want to dispel that myth. Like we're not waiting to be fully healed. We're just waiting until the wound feels like it's scabbed over a bit and we can share that aspect of our journey. So anyway, I'm going on a bit of a tangent now, down into practitioner skills, but it's helpful. And so we don't have to be fully healed before sharing our story, and we can be visible while still in the work. And there's a kind of dance that we do with that. And it's really learning very much practitioner skills. What else do I want to talk about? I think there's something around, particularly as we move into like practitioner-based stuff, because we're talking about our stories as medicine. Like one of the things that's been very alive for me in my journey of sharing medicine is that piece around judgment, misunderstanding, rejection when we share our truth. And this isn't necessarily just about practitioner, actually. This is about reclaiming our voice, because even as we just share with our family, with our friends, like there will sometimes be judgment, misunderstanding, rejection. I actually experienced it just this week, whereby a friend just completely misunderstood me and I misunderstood obviously what she was saying. And it's like part of the work of the witch is learning how to navigate that and still show up in our truth. I mean, I've had quite a journey with this because as a practitioner, I've been called all sorts on social media, like a charlatan, a cult leader. Like these have been my moments of what I call material for liberation for this particular wound. And so as we start to share our voice, particularly if we are visible in the media or on social, and And even if we're just sharing our voice to our friends and family, we have to be open to the possibility that we will be judged, that there will be misunderstanding, that we will be potentially rejected, that we will be projected onto or placed on a pedestal. And part of that is being conscious that that is a cost, and choosing to see that as material for our liberation, to see what comes up for us when we experience that, to like heal that part of us that fears judgment, misunderstanding, rejection, because we eventually learn, okay, I've been judged, I've been rejected, and I'm still safe. Like, it's very healing for our nervous system to go through that and be like, oh, the worst happened and I'm here and I'm okay and I'm with myself and I'm able to hold myself in this. Like, it's that's the real initiation. Like, we start to really see and feel and know that as we reclaim our voice, we can survive. Like, even if we're not seen, because I think this is the thing, we've got this fantasy almost that being seen is the gold. And yet, even if we're not seen, like, our voice can still be medicine, number one, because some people maybe just might not be ready for it, and that's okay. But also, we've stayed true to ourselves. And that is the real gold. It's not being seen. It's not being understood in many ways. It's seeing and understanding ourselves. Like, that is the ultimate gold of being a witch that has actually, like, that's for me, like, the biggest reason to do this work is not to be seen. This is something that I've had to come to terms with, FYI, is like, it's not really about being seen by others. The work is to truly see, welcome, love, understand ourselves. Because half the time we're rejecting who we are in the fear of being rejected by others. And so that's the liberation, ultimately, of the witch that's on offer. And like, yeah, that's where our power is. That's where our sovereignty is. Because ultimately, our bodies will tell us if we're not doing that. We'll be burned out. We'll be exhausted. We'll be just like, yeah, like we might have headaches. We might have all sorts of different things like autoimmune disorders or whatever it is. Like, our body's going to communicate where we're like moving away from our authenticity, from our feminine expression. And the real invitation in all of that, because that's the way the witch will call to us, is through physical pain, through exhaustion, through, all those sorts of things. Like, the real invitation from the witch is to learn to reclaim our authentic power rather than seeking validation. And truly owning our voice, even when there might be some risk of being rejected. So, whew, I mean, that's the real gold, isn't it? Like, just truly being ourselves. That's something that I have had to learn through years of like showing up, speaking, having people reject me, having people like question, misunderstand. Like, I mean, actually recently, and this is kind of relevant in that the witch is kind of also similar to this in I've recently had a diagnosis which I sought because I already knew that it was the case, and I'm good with that. And I didn't really need the label, but I also kind of wanted to explore it. So I've been diagnosed with autism and ADHD, so neurodivergence. And of course, often the witch has similar like patterns as neurodivergent women in terms of they're often very deep, they're often very sensitive. And all of those sorts of things. But there's also a difference in the way that neurodivergent people relate in the world. And that difference has become more and more apparent, like throughout the time of exploring being a witch because of course the witch is a symbol of being outcast. Like, she is different, she is wild, like she's going against the grain. Neurodivergence also has the same qualities. And so the more and more I step into owning that, the more and more I have to be okay with owning that I am seen as weird. I am seen as wild. I am seen as different. And like the invitation is to own that. Like that is a woman speaking from power, being in her magic, being wild. And so much shifts when we do that. Like so much healing happens. So much of our body like just relaxes. It's like, oh, I am safe to be who I am. I'm safe to speak. I'm safe to share what's going to be disagreed with. Like, we can disagree and I can still love you, is something that one of my own guides has said to me, which really like stands out. It's like, oh, that's possible. Like, we can disagree and still love each other. Like, what? Like, is that really? um, and so yeah, it's just so much alchemy when we think and when we start to like reclaim our voice, just on a very practical, personal healing level. And so I guess to just bring it to a close, it's like, I'm wondering if there's like a practical entry point. Like where do we begin with this? I think probably with starting to illuminate where we hold this witch wound. Like, where do we resonate with? Where do you resonate with my story? Where do you resonate with what I've shared of the witch and the witch wound and the temptation to hide and the fear of using our voice, the fear of sharing our story? Like, start there. Just start to notice. Like, that's one of the most important things, is starting to notice like where you resonate with that, where you resonate with being in the witch wound. Because, and where you resonate with being the secret witch who hides, because that is ultimately the starting point for this journey. Like the secret witch, as we start to listen to that part of ourselves that's going, hello, I'm hiding. She reveals the next step. And of course, if you want to go deeper, there's other ways that you can do that. In particular, we have the Secret Witch membership, the Apothecary, where we explore all of this. So you're welcome to join us in there. But firstly, first step is simply noticing, like, where do you feel a resonance with this, with my story, with the journey that I've described, with all of the stuff in this episode? And if you have, then maybe an aligned action is to join us for the next step. But yeah, so I'm going to leave it there. I feel like the biggest truth for me that I would like to leave you with is just the gold available in the freedom to be unapologetically ourselves. Yeah, it's like, it's the work, and it's also been so life-changing for me. And for many of the women I know that I guide, like, I know they would also agree. But it's just, yeah, give that gift to yourself. Like, allow yourself permission to be in the initiation. Yeah. All right, my loves, I'm going to leave it there. And yeah, see you next time. I actually really loved recording this episode. I felt like really like alive. So here are my takeaways. Reclaiming our voice is not about simply being confident. It's an initiation into being fully seen in our truth. And it will ask us to meet fear, honesty, and identity in a deeper way. To be seen, we have to speak. And often that is vulnerable, but it's also worth it for the gift of being able to fully be ourselves. The witch wound often lives beneath the fear of visibility, the fear of judgment, rejection, or being too much. And our work is to recognize that this is part of our healing. Your story is not just something that happened to you. It is your archetypal remedy. And when alchemized, it becomes medicine for ourselves and others. The edge of visibility often begins when we stop sharing what is safe or universal and start expressing our unique perspective and embodied witchy truth. Not everything needs to be shared. Discernment is part of our power, and knowing what is integrated versus still processing protects both ourselves and our work. You don't need equally to be fully healed to be seen, but your power comes from owning where you are rather than performing a version of yourself for acceptance. We often have a fantasy that being seen and accepted will fulfill us, but the real person we want to be seen and loved by is ourselves.